Aloha, welcome back to Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour super tight shirt episode. Why is this shirt so tight? And also, what are these things? What are you supposed to do with this? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the episode where I present to you my top 5 favorite vintage tiki mugs. Now, I rarely prefer to have cocktails in tiki mugs. I like to see what the drink looks like, unless the drink is disgusting looking. Then you put it into a tiki mug. Or, if I'm at a restaurant, there is nothing better than the waiter or waitress walking up to your table with a tiki mug and like flowers and mint and the cocktail inside. That was the whole point of tiki mugs. They were a souvenir item. So many vintage tiki bars offered tiki mugs with their cocktails. It was like a fun thing. You order your cocktail, you pay a little extra, you get to keep the mug. Actually, I think back in those days, you just got the cocktail and you got a mug with it. I don't know, things were cheaper back then, I think. So many different classic tiki bars offered tiki mugs with their cocktails. Right on the menu, you could see it illustrated in there, from the Stockton Islander to Trader Vic's to the Mai Kai, all kinds of places, the Kahiki in Columbus, Ohio. I love drinking cocktails at home in Mai Tai glasses, zombie glasses, because I love seeing the cocktail. But transport yourself back in time to a place where you're wearing a suit or a dress. Somebody brings on a tray this exotic sculpted mug with mint and flowers and fruit coming out of it and a delicious libation. Man, so what I enjoy about vintage tiki mugs is that you have the opportunity to time travel. You're drinking out of the same glass that who knows how many other people did over the years. It's magical. So here are my top 5 favorite vintage tiki mugs. If you are a collector of vintage tiki mugs, you're probably looking at this and going, yeah, dude, it's just an OMC mug. They made these by the tens of thousands, and they offered them to just about every restaurant, Asian restaurant, tiki restaurant, and then you could get your own bar or restaurant name printed on the back. So they're not all that rare, they're fairly common, but this one in particular has a special place in my heart. I found it in a thrift store in South Orange County. It is for the Kona Hawaii, and I just never found anything from my immediate area. Okay, so I'm in Costa Mesa. The Kona Hawaii was in Santa Ana. It would have been the closest vintage tiki bar to my house. And so every time I see one of those things pop up, I go, this feels like a place that I should have been. And in fact, it was still in operation through the mid 90s. No Doubt played there. Fishbone played there. Ska bands, for some reason, loved the Kona Hawaii. Isn't that bizarre? So in the research that I've done, this place was amazing. It was one of those places that had a bridge over water that surrounded the whole place, where you metaphorically cross over from Santa Ana into paradise. I'm so upset that I never got to go there. It had 3 separate areas that you could visit every time you went to the Kona Hawaii. They had the Kono Aloha Room, where families may relax. They had the tea house, where you are served by girls in kimonos. And they had the luau shack for cocktails and dinner. I think maybe the luau shack was where the stage was, because they had all kinds of entertainment. It turned into a full music venue. The postcards that I've seen from Kona Hawaii say that you are being served by a staff representing many nations of the Far East. And if you really dig into the Kona Hawaii, there's a Facebook group where all the old servers still go on there and talk about the memories they have of Kona Hawaii. And so while this may not be the most collectible mug, to me, because of where I live, it means a lot. All right. Let's go to the next mug, Mr. Bali Hi. He is certainly not rare. At one point, I found an estate sale where I think I ended up with 7 or 8 all at the same time. I will tell you right now that if you end up with a Mr. Bali Hi, they are painted with cold paint, which means that if you put him in the dishwasher, his eyes will go away, the paint on his bone thing will go away, he will be stripped bare. So don't put him in the dishwasher, for God's sakes. There are 2 straw holes in his head. That means that you can enjoy a cocktail with a friend. The Mr. Bali Hi mug is modeled after the carving in front of the Bali Hi on Shelter Island in San Diego, dating all the way back to the early 1950s. And then they created the mug for you to drink out of this dude's head. Now, the research that I've done, I think the flat bottom is older than the concave bottom. And the reason that I say that is because eventually I would imagine that the owners of the Bali Hi got wise to the idea that they don't need to leave all of this area down here for cocktail, when if they make it concave, they can reduce the capacity. So I think they got wise over the years, and the flat bottom was the earliest version. The concave version maybe came in the 60s or so. I have both versions. I just love this one the most because it is vintage and it still looks pretty good for the paint. This mug was first produced by Otagiri. It is now being reproduced by our friends at Tiki Farm. The cocktail that was served in him was the Mr. Bali Hi cocktail in the 1950s and early 60s. It was an incredible cocktail. Now it is a cocktail that will strip paint off of your car. I know. Well, I'm never going to be invited back to the Bali Hi. I know. But look, dude, the drink is aggressive now. The original cocktail that was served in this featured lemon juice, pineapple juice, coffee-flavored brandy, light rum, and dark Jamaican rum. And it is a tasty, tasty treat. You can go back in the archives, and we have made this cocktail actually with my friend Linda, who is a Disney Imagineer. Mr. Bali Hi was painted all kinds of nonsensical colors over the years, like ridiculous stuff. And then in 2001, Kevin and Jody Daly of Disney Imagineering said, we would like to restore Mr. Bali Hi, please. And they painted him perfectly. Now, since then, it's been painted a couple times and it's kind of fallen off, and I wouldn't say that it looked as good as when they did it. I mean, these are guys who work on Disney stuff, but at least he's not ridiculous colors anymore. I think they removed the nose bone in like 1964 because it kept tripping people. The nose bone has been restored, not to the vintage look, but to the mug look. That is my second favorite vintage tiki mug in my collection. My third favorite vintage tiki mug, it's not a mug. And actually, I will say that I ended up getting the mug version of this more recently because for some reason, people just don't care about vintage tiki mugs like they used to. In the early days of our tiki resurgence and collecting, everybody was fanatical about the old stuff. Really, at the time, it was just Bosco and Monk Tiki and Tiki Farm. Maybe just like 3 or 4 different mug makers, but now there are so many different tiki mug makers. I believe I've told a story about this mug before on the show. I was in college in about 1998 or so, maybe 1999. I was just kind of aware of tiki at the time. Now, if you went on the internet back then, all that would come up was a dog named Tiki and Tiki Barber, the football player. So there wasn't a giant library of photos or information about tiki mugs. I was subscribed to Otto's Tiki News magazine. It was like a fanzine. It was before anybody knew anything. All these hip, lowbrow artists would contribute to it. Everybody was finding all this new information about tiki, true urban archaeology at the time. So I found this in a Stockton thrift store for 99 cents. It was written on the bottom in grease pencil. And in fact, the bottom says, federal law forbids sale or reuse of this bottle. I had no idea what that meant. It didn't say anything about tiki. It didn't say anything about cocktails. When I shook it, I could hear that there was maybe something inside. It sounded like a cork or something rolling around in there. When I was at the thrift store, I was like, 99 cents. It wasn't until Sven came out with the Book of Tiki in 1999 or 2000, maybe it was 2000, where I saw this in the book. I had a design professor in college who turned me onto tiki mugs. He was like, these are remnants of an old time where you would get a cocktail and then you could take it home at the end of the night. These were served in a set called Mai Tai Joe. And of course, Trader Vic's is famous for picking them up and serving their suffering bastard in these because, well, it looks like both of these guys have an enormous hangover. You can see that this guy has the Trader Vic's logo on the bottom. This guy was just a decanter that was filled with rum or something. I don't know a ton about this, but if anybody watching has more information about him, please leave a message in the comments below. I would love to know everything that there is to know about the suffering bastard decanter. All right, that's one of my favorite purely because of the story. And when I first got this thing, I found another one like him on eBay for $800. Now, I don't think they go for that much anymore, but when I saw that, I was like, oh my, there is something to this tiki thing. This is my second favorite tiki mug in all of the tiki mugs. The friendliest faced in vintage tiki mugs. Tiki Bob is just heralded as one of like the most duplicated, the most replicated tiki mug that there is. People have turned Tiki Bob into throw pillows and t-shirts and stuffed Tiki Bobs. Damn near anything that you can imagine. Paintings of Tiki Bob and versions of Tiki Bob, like with devil horns and all kinds of stuff. Everybody loves Tiki Bob. Now, I love Tiki Bob because of his place in the history of Tiki. You can still see a big sculpture of Tiki Bob in San Francisco in front of where Tiki Bob's was. I think it's like a crepe house now or something. But for the longest time, he was green. Tiki Bob was green. And then more recently, I would say within the last 5 years or so, a group of Tiki Files approached the crepe restaurant owners and said, you don't know the historical value of the sculpture that is in front of your restaurant. And they're like, yeah, it's weird. We don't know what's going on there, but whatever, he's green. And they were like, please let us paint him back to his former glory. It will bring you more business, not only from Tiki tourists, also is not some weird green thing that kind of fades into the background. Celebrate him. So the quick story about Tiki Bob's is that in 1955, Bob Bryant, who was an employee of Trader Vic's just down the street, had had enough. And he's like, dude, I could do this for myself. So he opened Tiki Bob's in San Francisco, down the street from Trader Vic's. I think it was kind of slow going for a while until he started doing lingerie lunches. Like, just when you think Tiki can't get any more crazy or amazing, you find out that there was a place in San Francisco that offered lingerie lunches. In 1959, the number of lunches that he served went from 45 to 450 per day. The story even gets more wild that in 1974, there was a murder. Actually, I think 2 murders in Tiki Bob's. There was a drunk guy that was short, 50 cents or something for a cocktail. He wanted another cocktail. He asked the couple next to him, he's like, hey man, you got some money that you can lend me so I can get a drink here? And they were like, sorry dude, we don't have money for the likes of you. And he goes, oh yeah? And he pulled out a gun and shot both of them. Crazy. And then to top it off, even more recently, we found out that Pagan Idol, a brand new, I don't know how new it is, a new tiki bar is now inhabiting one of the old locations of Tiki Bob's. Like by accident. They were lining up photographs and they're like, I think this water thing out in front of this building is the same one from Tiki Bob's. Isn't that wild? So Pagan Idol inhabits the other location of Tiki Bob's. Crazy. In the early days of the Tiki resurgence, I bid on and won a lot of, I think, 7 Tiki Bob's in like 2003 or something like that. You can't go back in your eBay bidding history that far, so I wish I remember exactly all the details about this, because all of a sudden this box of Tiki Bob showed up to my house and I was opening it, and there is fanaticism about this mug now. But back in the early days of Tiki collecting, he was just another cast of characters in all of the Tiki mugs. So much so that I even gave one of these to one of the Hula Girls go-go dancers for her birthday, and because Judy Luck absolutely deserves her own Tiki Bob. For all the years that we performed at Don the Beachcomber, there was a big case of Tiki mugs, and I even had a Tiki Bob as my cocktail glass that I drank out of at Don the Beachcomber. And so many people were like, you have a Tiki Bob in that case? And I was like, dude, I've got like 7 of them. So I sold a lot of them off. I think I have maybe 3 of them left. No, they're not for sale. Modern Tiki mug pioneer Bosco has said that he thinks that Tiki Bob was the first actual Tiki mug, 1955, the first representation of a Tiki as a mug. Crazy, huh? I love Tiki Bob. Love you, Tiki Bob. Okay. Now, my favorite vintage Tiki mug in my collection is the Mainlander from St. Louis, Missouri. And you go, what, dude? Like, that's not that exciting. Let me tell you why it's exciting. First of all, some of my favorite vintage mugs are not only because of the design of the mugs, but also because of the story behind me finding them. Just like I found the Kona Hawaii on a lunch break at a thrift store near my day job, which is recently, like within the last 5 years. And that just doesn't happen in Southern California anymore. But the Mainlander, I was on vacation in Maui, like Maui of all places. This mug's from St. Louis, Missouri. The Mainlander was an amazing tiki bar, well, tiki restaurant, really. The Mainlander opened in 1962. It featured grass shacks, bamboo-covered walls, all kinds of Polynesian art, and a tiki fountain. Now, the fountain is the most important thing about the whole story, because the fountain was a Whitco fountain. This mug was modeled after the Whitco fountain, as was their logo that was found on matchbooks and napkins and the menu, all kinds of things. They really utilized the Whitco fountain as like their whole guiding light for the branding. And I love the simplicity of this little mug. I also love that the tongue still has the red paint on it, because a lot of times that will be stripped down back to the original ceramic color. I love that I found this mug in Hawaii when it really came from like the middle of the United States. The middle of the United States is such the place for tiki. Like, you don't need tiki bars in Hawaii because you're already in paradise. But in St. Louis, Missouri, it's the perfect place for a place like the Mainlander. So that's why I love that mug. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour and my 5 favorite vintage tiki mugs in my collection. I would love to hear what your favorite tiki mug is from your collection, especially the vintage ones. Leave a message in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next Breezeway Cocktail Hour. Aloha.